Like, you know, the Quran says every people had a prophet. So that struck me as true. Because I think, you know, Native Americans, when the Christians came here, they just saw them as savages. But the Native Americans had their tradition. They had, you know, they had their tradition of prophecy and of wisdom. And so, and also I think Tawheed was definitely something, you know, the unity of God that's radical. It's not like Judaism or Christianity. In fact, Toynbee said it's the great gift of Islam was monotheism. You know, and he said that knowing exactly what he was saying, that the monotheism of Islam is almost Eastern more than Abrahamic. It's almost a Buddhist type of approach to reality, you know, in its real radical monotheism that particularly comes out in Sufic tradition, which was probably influenced by Buddhism to some degree.
And I was also wondering about this world culture that you were talking about. You were saying that, you know, Obama is an example of this, someone with Kenyan roots in the United States becoming president. Right. When you look at the world and you look at the future, do you see this world culture being, is it Western? Is it incorporating, you know, Eastern and Western elements? I'm just wondering what is it technological? Like, what is it looking like now, and what's it going to look like?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Part of it, there's definitely a Western cultural hegemony that's very powerful. There's rappers in Palestine, but they're rapping in Arabic. They're not rapping in English. So there's a retention of their own cultural tradition because they're speaking in their language, but they're speaking in their language through a syncopated medium of Black American culture. So that's happening all over, and it's very weird when you get Qawwali singers with rock musicians, or you get Junoon, who's, I mean, he's undeniably coming out of Pakistani culture, but he's using a Western medium to express his cultural truths. So that's what I mean. There's no doubt that the West, in a sense, is coloring this thing, but it's not purely Western. It's something else. And technology is definitely a powerful part of it, but technology is not, Western technology is definitely has certain elements that are very distinct, but technology is a human process. Many of the great inventions of technology came out of Persia, India. I mean, there's none of this. There's no ground zero without the Hindus, because they gave us zero. We couldn't even articulate ground zero without the Hindus. So, you know, technology, mathematics, which is the real means for the technological explosion, came from the Hindus, the Persians, the Arabs, and went into Europe. I mean, the Europeans didn't have any mathematics to speak of. I mean, they had the cumbersome Roman numerals for a long time. They couldn't even do basic, you know, operations. So, you know, but I you know, I don't, it's weird. The whole thing is weird. I don't know what it's going to look like down the road. I mean, you know, I was telling, because I was teaching a course at one of the colleges here today on Islam, and one of the students, they were asked me about tattoos in Islam, and I was explaining that in Judaism and Islam, tattoos are prohibited because mutilation of the body. And this Muslim girl said, you know, well, I want to do a tattoo, and is it a big sin or is it a little sin? You know, she wanted to know, like, what. And there's tattoos in Muslim culture, but tattoos in traditional cultures were always symmetrical. Even Maori tattoos, you know, always. They would never do asymmetrical tattoo. But I was just telling him, when I was growing up, tattoos were military, gangs, or prostitutes. I mean, that was my generation. You know, people didn't get tattoos unless you fit into really small category of people. Now it's become normalized. So there are definitely changes happening. You know, the what we talk about in public discourse now, the language that people use. I mean, these things, you know, are quite shocking for people, you know, even though I grew up in a generation that all this stuff was already breaking down, but nonetheless, it's still quite hard for me to witness a real degradation of culture. I mean, I think popular culture has become so degraded, it's become almost unbearable for me to see it. And I don't have contempt for the people, you know, because I don't blame the individuals that make up the components of a degraded culture, because I think we're all in essence victims of the same forces at work. I mean, I think there are some people that there's responsibility for, but I don't in any way have a contempt for those people. I don't want to be misconstrued in that way, because I don't. But it does trouble me to see it. I would like to see popular culture does not have to be degraded. The blues is not degraded music. It's popular, and I'm talking about Delta blues. I'm talking about Robert Johnson, and blues does not have to be degraded. But there are certain types of music that are out there now that are just, you know, it's hard to believe. You know?
And talking of degradation of culture, I want you to explain to me, with my Pakistani background, how does this girls gone wild phenomena, how would you explain that as an American?
Well, I think, you know, I think one of the things, I think Nietzsche, you know, Nietzsche talks about, you know, Dionysian and Apollonian impulses. And when a society is healthy, there's a balance between these two. When societies deviate, they deviate in the Apollonian, which is like Nazism, where the Dionysian is eliminated by force. Or they deviate in that kind of Dionysian culture where the Apollonian is suspended. So you know, just to explain those terms, you know, the Apollonian is that kind of order, and it's that outward, you know, the rule-based, and then the Dionysian is the free-flowing bacchanalian type of, you know, Mr. Tambourine Man. You know, it's let me dance beneath the diamond sky with one hand waving, free silhouetted by the sea, circled by the circus sands with all memory and fate, buried deep beneath the waves. Let me forget about today until tomorrow. I think that there's a desire to escape the world, and Girls Gone Wild is a degraded expression of that desire, which is a desire for ecstasy, ecstasis, to get out of one's state, you know, to get out of the madness of the world by going mad. So you know, it's troubling for me that these are the ways that people express that, but I understand where the impulse comes from and have some sympathy for it.
Haley,
What is shame and honor in this culture? Is there any shame and honor left in this culture?
That's a great question. Honor, people died for honor. It wasn't that long ago. You know, Alexander Hamilton died for honor at the hands of a scoundrel. Honor was just so rooted in the world, not just in Western culture, in all cultures. So honor to me is one of the great virtues, dignity, you know. And shame, you know, we have in many ways become a shameless culture. I mean, we're not entirely shameless, obviously, but in many ways, you know, we're losing a sense of just human dignity, and to me, it's deeply troubling. On the other hand, I witness it. I mean, you know, it's almost, I think Charles Dickens hit his hammer on the head when he said these are the best of times. You know, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. There's a lot of truth in that statement. You know, in many ways, Obama, I think, showed an immense amount of grace and dignity, and and I think his wife does, and his children, and I think people recognize that, and they honor it when they see it. And there are still many, many profoundly dignified people in this culture, and I'm always struck by that. And then I see people. I saw this lady down I was involved in something for Malaria No More, and there was the girl that did the makeup because it was on camera, and she had all the tattoos and the nose ring and the tongue piercing, and she was actually a really sweet person, and I knew there was like a goodness there. So I can do the crash thing, which is just judge on the outward and kind of look with contempt at this person. But humans are amazing. I mean, there's dignity in a prostitute, at times. So, everybody carries that extraordinary spark of the divine light that has been put in us, and we shouldn't forget that. So, I can sit here like a increasingly middle-aged man and lament the loss of, the past, but that's something people at my age start doing, so.
Jonathan, Madhya?
You mentioned earlier, talking about immigration, immigrants coming to the country and being a part of this and becoming American. But you specifically said becoming white for the Irish. What does that mean today, and is that still true? Do people still have to become white to be a part of America?
I think in some ways they certainly, Obama's English, although he uses some cadences from the African church, Obama's English is a very rarefied, educated, white English. He's not speaking Ebonics. So in that way, there is there is still a dominant culture that is largely occupied by white people, and I think that will change, in ways, and people like Obama will change it because they're bringing in other tributaries into that river. So, but I think the Irish becoming white. They definitely wanted to be accepted by Anglo-Saxon culture. So, and even the Catholics, normalizing Catholicism, because Catholicism and the Catholic rights of Philadelphia, Catholics were persecuted in this country in many places. Papists, they weren't trusted. So from that point of view, the WASP culture, I think, has diminished immensely. It's almost a caricature now. It's not even, but that there are many good things about that culture. On the other hand, like there are a lot of the things that made this country, the things that are great about this country, are certain things that are rooted in aspects of that culture. So not all things from the WASP culture are negative. But certainly the superiority was a major problem in an inherent belief in their superiority over other cultures. So, but there's a richness in all these different cultures. And there's also, people are different. Mexicans aren't lazy, they're hard workers. That's a stereotype of Mexicans. They're not lazy, but Mexicans enjoy siesta. They enjoy, many Mexicans do. They enjoy certain things that other cultures, might not focus on or emphasize. Maybe working 20 hours extra a week is not what their goal in life. There are cultures that just don't see climbing the corporate ladder as the end-all of existence, that family is more important than that. So they want to be in a job where they work their 8 hours and go home and experience other things.
I wanted to ask about the Muslim youth. Do you see a certain trend the Muslim youth here is taking? Is it towards Orthodox Islam, or is it towards that fusion you're talking about, or is it just towards, being just apathetic? What trend do you see with the youth?
Well, I think there are a lot of trends out there. You have progressive Muslim, you have, you know, America is a place where religions fragment.